Some places in Pennsylvania wear their history like a badge. Others hide it like a wound that never healed, through the forests, along the abandoned rails, in the towns wiped off the map. There are stories that were never meant to be told, stories that still move in the dark, still whisper names, still wait for someone curious enough or foolish enough to answer. Tonight we're going to knock on 6 doors that were never meant to open, and once you hear what's inside, you can't unhear it. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video you will never see Pennsylvania the same way again. The vanishing village of Alvira. It's easy to miss. A turn off a rural highway in Union County leads to a place that technically no longer exists. There are no signs, no welcome, no official recognition, just a cracked asphalt road disappearing into the woods, overtaken by roots, flanked by silent bunkers, and haunted by what it once was. Alvira. Once a quiet farming town nestled in central Pennsylvania, Alvira was founded in the 1800s by Quaker settlers. It had a schoolhouse, a church, a general store, and generations of families that lived and died in peace. By the early 1940s, the population hovered around 100. Then came the war. In 1942, the US government exercised eminent domain to seize the entire village. The residents were told their land was needed for a munitions factory, the Susquehanna Ordnance Depot. They were given just a few weeks to pack up and leave. Officials promised the evacuation was temporary, that once the war ended, the town would be returned to its people. That never happened. Alvira was bulldozed, entire homes razed, fields were flattened, trees cut, headstones relocated, or so they claimed. In their place rose nearly 200 concrete bunkers, used to store explosives for the war effort, but after the war ended, the land wasn't returned. The factory was decommissioned, but the government held onto the property, and Alvira was erased from the map. Today, few people even know it existed. What remains now are ghostly fragments, narrow roads choked by vegetation, bunker doors rusted shut, and foundations barely visible under the moss. But the strangest remnant is the cemetery, still standing, still maintained. Rows of weather-worn gravestones, many with dates from the 1800s, and some with fresh flowers. Tulips in spring, lilies in summer, always carefully arranged. Always recent, but no one knows who leaves them. There are no living descendants officially listed, no nearby family, and no camera has ever captured anyone visiting the graves. Hikers who wander through the woods near the bunkers tell eerily similar stories. Overwhelming stillness, dead air, the sound of footsteps that don't match your own. Some have seen shadow-like figures between the trees, vanishing when approached. One photographer reported hearing whispers, clear, direct, calling her by name. She was alone. No cell service, no nearby homes. Researchers digging through military archives confirm the land seizure, the forced evacuation, and the broken promise of return. But the residents? Many disappeared from public records entirely. It's as if, once Alvira was taken, the people were too. There's a theory that some former residents came back, not physically, but spiritually, drawn to what was stolen from them, bound to the place where their families were buried, where their homes once stood. Some say the bunkers hum at night. Others claim to have seen pale faces inside them. There are no lights, no electricity, and yet, on more than one occasion, a faint glow has been reported leaking from under a sealed bunker door. Authorities have investigated. Nothing was found inside, but the concrete was warm to the touch. In official documents, Alvira is classified as unincorporated land owned by the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. But to those who walk its overgrown roads, it is very much a place with presence, with memory, with watchers. This isn't just an abandoned town, it's a town that was taken, violently, quietly, and without justice. And some say places like that don't just vanish, they wait. Some towns fade into history. Others refuse to let go, even when there's no one left to stay. The Screaming Tunnel of York. It doesn't look like much. Just a stone tunnel tucked under an old railway bed, surrounded by woods that have grown thick with time. But in York County, it's the kind of place you only visit once, if you're smart. Local teens call it a dare. Ghost hunters call it cursed. The older generation just calls it trouble. They all mean the same thing. The tunnel, now cracked and moss-covered, was built in the 1800s as part of a rail line that was eventually abandoned. Time turned it into a shortcut for hikers and the occasional lost driver. But the reputation? That's harder to explain, because for decades, people who've walked into that tunnel haven't come out quite the same. It starts with the match. The local legend goes like this. Walk to the center of the tunnel, strike a wooden match and wait. If the match goes out on its own, blown out by some invisible force, you'll hear her. Not right away, not immediately, but soon enough. They say the scream comes from deep inside the walls, like the stone itself is remembering something awful. A scream so loud and sharp it doesn't echo, it pierces. It ends suddenly, and then there's silence, the kind that swallows your breath and makes you forget what you were doing there in the first place. The stories vary, but one name comes up more than any other: Annabelle. According to local folklore, she was a young girl, no older than 12, whose body was found charred and twisted inside the tunnel sometime in the late 19th century. Her dress had caught fire, but no one ever figured out how. Some say it was an accident. Others whisper about something far worse: a father's rage, a secret buried by the town, or even a ritual gone wrong. But no records exist. No newspaper clippings, no cemetery listing her name. Just a story passed down in murmurs and warnings. Still, that hasn't stopped people from trying to prove it. Paranormal teams have investigated the site for years. They've set up cameras, EVP recorders, even thermal scanners. The results? Inconclusive, but unsettling. One team caught audio of a faint child's voice repeating, "Cold, cold, cold." Another picked up footsteps pacing in circles, even though the tunnel was confirmed empty. Flashlights flicker, batteries drain, and in more than one case, team members report a sensation of being watched, not from in front or behind, but from above, as if something's clinging to the ceiling, just out of sight. Locals have their own stories. A couple from Red Lion got stranded when their car mysteriously stalled just outside the tunnel. While the husband went to check under the hood, the wife stayed inside, only to hear a scream so sharp it shattered the passenger window beside her. Police never found evidence of impact, and the engine restarted without issue minutes later. Another account, shared by a former firefighter, describes finding a dead raccoon in the middle of the tunnel, burnt black but with no signs of a fire anywhere around it. Like it had been flash-fried, he said, but the walls were cold, and the air was wet. Despite these reports, nothing official has ever confirmed the tunnel to be dangerous. But everyone agrees on one thing: once the match goes out, something else wakes up. Some say it's Annabelle. Others believe it's something older, something that feeds off the ritual itself, a hunger built from attention. And the more people visit, the stronger it gets. So the question isn't whether the legend is real. The question is, what happens when the screaming stops and the silence finally answers back? You can light the way. But in this tunnel, something else decides when the light goes out. The haunting of Jean Bonet Tavern. At the edge of the Allegheny Mountains, along a winding rural road in Bedford County, stands a building older than the country itself. Stone walls, wooden beams, a wide porch that creaks under its own history. To passing travelers, it might look like the perfect stop for a warm meal or a quiet night's rest. But those who know its past rarely stay the night. This is the Jean Bonet Tavern, built in 1760 and still standing. Before the Revolution, it was a trading post, then a frontier inn. During the Whiskey Rebellion, it served as a meeting place for armed protesters. Throughout the centuries, it's been a tavern, a lodge, a private residence, and a military outpost. Men have drank here before marching into battle. Deals were made, crimes committed, lives ended. Some say the floorboards remember every secret spilled onto them, and some of those secrets still speak. The first signs of haunting began with whispers, faint voices drifting through the upper floors at night. Employees would lock the tavern after closing, only to return in the morning and find furniture moved, lights turned on, doors mysteriously ajar. At first, the staff blamed each other. Then they saw him, a man in a tricorn hat, tall, silent, dressed in colonial garb, standing perfectly still in the hallway near room 3. His reflection appears in mirrors. He's been seen walking through closed doors. But the most disturbing thing, he never breaks eye contact, not even as he vanishes. Guests have reported being touched in their sleep, a hand around the ankle, fingers brushing their hair. One couple fled in the middle of the night after feeling something climb into bed with them. When they turned on the light, the indentation was still there, as if someone invisible was sitting on the mattress. Then there's the basement. In 1957, during renovations, construction workers unearthed something buried beneath the stone floor, a shallow grave. Inside were multiple human remains, bones stacked together, unnamed, unclaimed. No records matched the burial. The discovery was quieted and the tavern kept operating, but after that the activity escalated. Cold spots in summer, the smell of gunpowder with no source, a growling sound that comes from under the floor. And one night, a bartender locked the front door, turned around and found every chair in the dining room flipped upside down, silently, in the seconds it took to close a latch. No one heard a thing. Historians speculate the bodies may have belonged to early outlaws, possibly executed and buried in secret. Others believe they were victims of crimes never recorded, travelers robbed and silenced along the mountain roads. Paranormal investigators who've spent the night say the energy shifts room by room, like someone following their movements. One psychic described it as a place of waiting, full of spirits, still replaying their last night, over and over again. The current owners embrace the legend, even offering ghost tours. But behind the marketing is a sense of caution. Staff don't linger alone, the attic is kept locked, and no one, not even long-time employees, will enter the basement after dark, because something down there doesn't like to be disturbed. Some guests check in for a night, others never check out. The Black Mist of Seven Gates. There's a patch of forest in Hellam Township where compasses fail, fog settles even in clear weather, and the woods seem to twist back on themselves. Locals call it the Gates, but most won't say that name out loud after dark. This is where the line between myth and map dissolves. According to long-standing urban legend, the woods were once home to a secluded psychiatric hospital, unmarked, unregistered, and forgotten by official history. Hidden deep in the forest, it was said to house the most violent and disturbed patients in the region. Then one night it burned. The story goes, during the fire, several inmates escaped into the woods. Authorities constructed 7 massive iron gates to contain the perimeter, each one leading deeper into the trees. Most were recaptured, but not all. And those gates? Some say they're still there, though only one remains visible. It stands crooked among overgrowth, rusted by decades of rain and time, just a single structure surrounded by silence. But those who pass through it say something changes the deeper they go. A black mist, thick, slow, almost sentient. It rolls in suddenly without wind or warning, and when it does, people report losing all sense of direction, even in daylight. GPS malfunctions, phones die, voices are swallowed mid-sentence. One man described it as walking through oil made of sound. Another claimed he saw someone, or something, standing within the fog, motionless, barely outlined against the dark. When he turned to flee, the figure was suddenly in front of him. He never found the trail again. A search party located him 36 hours later, barefoot, 20 miles from where he entered, with no memory of how he got there. Others haven't been so lucky. In 1999, a group of college students from York disappeared after allegedly trying to find all 7 gates. Their car was located, their campsite found, but no trace of the group was ever recovered. Police denied the existence of any gates, calling it a fabricated story that got out of control. But hikers since then have found strange clearings, metal fragments twisted like vines, and unnatural scorch marks on tree trunks, often in groups of 7. Some claim the gates form a pattern when mapped from above, a spiral that leads inward, ending at an unmarked spot the locals refuse to enter. The most terrifying accounts involve the screams, muffled, garbled, like underwater crying. Not animal, not human, heard from within the mist, and always followed by total silence. Some say it's the voices of those who didn't find their way out. Others believe that passing through all 7 gates, if you can even find them, opens a door to another reality, one that doesn't let you return. Historians insist there was never an asylum here. No fire, no gates officially recorded, but land records for a 20-acre parcel in the area were sealed in 1933, the same year the legend claims the incident took place. The name listed on the deed, classified by court order. Even among skeptics, the forest has a reputation. Trees that seem to lean toward you. The smell of burning wood with no source. A feeling of being followed, even when you're alone. And always, just beyond your vision, the mist. It doesn't rise, it arrives. They say the gates are gone, but sometimes the mist brings them back. The phantom railcar of Broadtop Mountain. There are no active tracks on Broadtop Mountain. Just rusted rails swallowed by vines, wooden ties rotting under moss, and echoes that don't make sense. But some nights, something still rides the line. Tucked into the Appalachian spine of south-central Pennsylvania, the Broadtop Mountain region was once a thriving coal corridor, bustling with trains, miners and small-town depots. In the early 1900s, the area boomed with industry, powered by the Broadtop Railroad, which cut a winding path through the mountain, hauling black diamonds to the world beyond. Then came the crash. Mines closed, rails went cold, the towns faded into quiet. By the 1950s, the trains were gone, or so they say. For decades, hikers and residents have reported the same impossible event. A railcar, illuminated by flickering lantern light, gliding silently through the woods. No sound, no engine, just a glow moving through the trees, sometimes on old rails, sometimes floating above them. Witnesses describe it as antique in design: wrought iron, aged wood, oil lamps swinging from hooks. Sometimes it appears empty. Other times, figures are seen seated inside, unmoving, expressionless, not quite right. In 1907, the Broadtop mining company suffered a massive derailment on a remote stretch near Sandy Run. A maintenance car carrying 6 men plunged into a ravine after the brake system failed. The rail car was split in two. All 6 workers died instantly, crushed, burned, or flung into the trees. The tragedy made headlines across the state, but after the crash site was cleared, strange sightings began. It started with sounds, metallic clanking echoing across the valley with no known source. Then came the sightings, a glowing car drifting along rails that no longer connected to anywhere. By the 1970s, the legend had a name: the Phantom Rail Car. Hunters claim to hear it approaching long before it appears, not the rumble of wheels, but a high-pitched ringing like iron under pressure. When it passes, the temperature drops. One man said his breath turned visible in mid-July. Another described his flashlight flickering violently as the car passed through the tree line, vanishing before reaching the next bend. The strangest reports involved time distortion. One group of hikers claimed to have seen the rail car while camping near an old tunnel. They watched it pass, ghost-like, at around 11:30 p.m., a detail they verified by their watches and phones. But when they returned to their car, just a mile away, it was after 3 a.m. they couldn't explain the lost hours. Skeptics suggest group hysteria or optical illusions created by mist and moonlight, but none of that explains the sound, the rhythmic clack of iron wheels on rails that haven't existed in decades. Local law holds that the souls of the men lost in the 1907 crash are still tied to the rail car, doomed to complete a journey that was never finished. Some even claim the rail car only appears to those who are next. An omen, a warning, a question. What happens if it ever stops? So far, no one's ever seen it come to a full halt, but some have followed it. None returned. You can hear it coming, hear it. You can see it passing, but you'll never see where it stops. The drowned bells of Connemore. Some disasters leave behind ruins, others leave behind echoes. On May 31st, 1889 at 3:10 p.m., the South Fork Dam collapsed after days of torrential rain, unleashing 20 million tons of water onto the unsuspecting city of Johnstown. A wall of debris-filled floodwater, reaching 40 feet high and moving at 40 miles per hour, leveled everything in its path. Homes shattered, trains derailed, entire families vanished. Over 2,200 people died in what remains one of the deadliest disasters in American history, but not everything drowned that day. In the heart of the destroyed city stood a Catholic church with tall iron bells, forged in Europe, brought to Pennsylvania by immigrant hands, and installed with reverence. When the flood hit, the building collapsed, and the bells fell with it, pulled under by the surging water and buried beneath the debris and mud of the Connemore River. They were never recovered, and yet they're still heard. Locals in modern-day Johnstown have long reported an eerie phenomenon. On still, windless nights, especially near the anniversary of the flood, the sound of bells drifting from the riverbed, low, metallic, and echoing as if from beneath miles of water. No clear melody, just a pattern. 3 chimes, a pause, then 2 more. Fishermen speak of hearing the bells moments before their lines snap, as if something unseen tugs from below. Night swimmers report sudden drops in water temperature, followed by a strange stillness, even when the surface should be rippling. And some boaters have claimed to hear not only bells, but chanting. Ancient, wordless, deep. Paranormal researchers have tried to capture the sounds using underwater microphones. In 2014, a team from Pittsburgh lowered a hydrophone into the Connemore and recorded hours of audio. Most of it was nothing, the gurgle of current, distant thunder. But at timestamp 03:12 a.m., a clear bell tone rang out, followed by another, then silence. They played the recording for local historians, who confirmed the tones matched the bells once housed in the original church. No explanation was ever found. Divers have scoured the river in search of the metal relics. Magnetometers have scanned the riverbed. No trace of the bells has been located. It's as if they were never there, and yet they refuse to be forgotten. Some believe the sound is a form of trauma echo, the flood replaying itself year after year. Others believe the bells were cursed by the suffering of the day they sank, forever tolling beneath the surface as a warning. A few even claim the chimes aren't from this world at all, but something calling from beneath. In 2007, a local man walking his dog near the riverbank reported hearing the bells and seeing what he described as light under the water, like stained glass flickering on the rocks. He turned to leave. His dog wouldn't move. Moments later, the light vanished, and the dog bolted in the opposite direction, howling. The man never walked that route again. Most people in Johnstown don't talk about the bells. They'll acknowledge the flood, the tragedy, the recovery. But the sounds that sometimes rise from the Conmore, those are met with silence, because if you admit they're real, you might start listening for them. And some believe if you hear all 5 chimes, something hears you back. The water buried the town, but not its voice. 6 places, 6 stories that refuse to die, a village that never came home, a scream no match can silence, a tavern that remembers who it buried, a mist that brings back the gates you prayed were gone, a train that keeps riding towards something you'll never see, and bells still ringing beneath the surface of a flood long past. Some say these are just stories, but when the air goes still and your reflection stares too long, you might start to wonder what else Pennsylvania is still hiding. So if you're tempted to go looking, stop. Ask yourself one question first. When you find the truth, will it let you go? If you think this state was disturbing, just wait. Our playlist dives into the strangest, darkest stories from every state in the United States. Real history, real places, and mysteries that still breathe. Click the playlist now. Discover the secrets buried in your own backyard. And remember, lock your doors. Put on your headphones and don't look back, because after this video, you'll never see Pennsylvania the same way again.